Good morning. We were just back in the green room having a love fest on vaccines. We all share, I think, a great love of working in this space. And, I think obviously the holy grail is to prevent a disease. Preventing it really is, as good as it gets in terms of healthcare. So, and Raul has practiced both in Venezuela and in the US, and I had an interesting story about sort of what inspires him to work in vaccines and just sort of the juxtaposition of working in Venezuela versus the United States. So I thought it'd be good for you to share that story.
Sure. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for inviting me. So my story is a simple one. I am new to vaccines, and I am new to the pharmaceutical industry. I'm just a physician, and I graduated from medical school in Venezuela. And there I saw many vaccine-preventable diseases. I saw diphtheria, tetanus, mumps, measles, rubella. I saw everything. After I graduated, I came to the US. I came to Connecticut, to New Haven. And there I practiced for a few years doing my internship, residency, and fellowship. And I didn't see those diseases. I came back to my country after 7 years in New Haven, and then I saw them again. So I became convinced that vaccine-preventable diseases, A, are preventable, and B, need to be prevented by us. So that's how I am so convinced about the value of vaccination.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about advancing a new era in vaccines, and hopefully everybody's had a chance to see the report that was on your chair on all the vaccines in development. There are 264 candidates in the pipeline, a huge number. Obviously, all of them won't make it to the finish line, but I thought it'd be helpful, Ruxandra, if you could just break down for us what that 264 looks like.
So thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here today. And to your question, probably everyone is imagining that those vaccines are actually targeting infectious diseases. In fact, it is a bit of a misconception. A lot of work is ongoing in the area of oncology, but also things like Alzheimer, allergy, other types of indications. And if you're looking at the infectious disease, we do have in development both therapeutic vaccines and preventing vaccines, looking at pathogens who were probably our enemies for many, many years, like HIV, areas where we need to develop better vaccines, like tuberculosis. A lot of work on influenza, in particular strains that might have a pandemic potential, and then of course the emerging epidemics, the diseases that are recurrent, but they do actually create a lot of damage when they are recurring, such as Ebola and other types of encephalitis. So while the number seems very big, in fact, the indications are extremely diverse, and the approaches to solving these issues are equally diverse.
So, Raul, can you, I was reading recently that the dengue vaccine took 20 years and $1.5 billion to bring it to the finish line. Can you talk to us a little bit about what goes into actually, sort of idea to arm, what goes into that process of both developing and bringing a vaccine to market?
Sure. So I headed the medical part of the DMC for the Sanofi dengue vaccine, so I have some experience in it. It was a fabulous development, and as you said, took a long time and many, many US dollars. So it all starts with an unmet medical need. When there is a need for a vaccine, then there's the idea that we need to make a vaccine. Immediately after that, when the need is defined and measured and continues to be unmet, then there's a process of discovery. And this is an intellectual and laboratory process which also takes years, where you make a vaccine candidate. You use knowledge of chemistry, you use knowledge of immunology, pharmacology, and you integrate all of those, and you make a vaccine that is potentially going to be used in the future. Once you have that product that you really believe is going to be safe and is going to produce some kind of an immunological response that will be useful to prevent the disease or to prevent colonization or whatever, then you go to testing of that product. And the testing has essentially two areas. One is in animals. That's called preclinical testing. That also takes some time and effort. And is done with very strict rules of good laboratory practices. And then the second absolutely fascinating part of this testing, which is the testing in human beings. Testing in human beings takes a long time, takes a lot of effort, takes some risk. You will understand that there are many, 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 not only scientific, but also ethical and practical questions that need to be answered during that period of testing in humans. The testing in humans is complex. It has 3 or 4 phases. The first phase is based on safety. Safety is paramount to any vaccine. The second, and it takes a few patients or a few individuals. The phase 2 is the proof of concept. There is where you see whether the vaccine not only continues to be safe in a larger number of individuals, but also now produces a response that you think may predict prevention of the disease you're targeting. Then comes the larger pivotal trials that make sure that the numbers that you got in the first 2 phases are really replicated in a larger number of patients. And sometimes you need phase 4 immediately after marketing or around marketing that target safety, efficacy, and long-term efficacy and safety. Then you have to manufacture the vaccine. And to manufacture the vaccine, this is a painstaking process, an extraordinarily delicate process. And at the end of this process, you have a product that is of very high quality. And those are the kinds of vaccines that we are enjoying right now.
Thanks. So I wanted to get into adult immunizations briefly. I think there was a session earlier this week in Washington on adult immunization rates and why we're failing to hit the Healthy People 2020 targets. So we only have a couple minutes left, but I think it would be insightful to hear your thoughts on really how we take advantage of these. I mean, to me, it's a function of like, do you want to get sick or do you not want to get sick? But I don't think that people necessarily see it that way. And I think, you know, we have these great tools to keep people healthy, and we're really not taking full advantage of them at the teen and adult level. So in just a minute or so, if you could share both your thoughts on really how we can get folks to embrace these vaccines better. Ruxandra, you want to start?
So vaccines, together with clean water, access to clean water, and some of the hygiene measures are the interventions that added 30 years to our lifetime and a lot of well-being. Think polio. So thinking that we have been rather successful, at least in some parts of the world, with pediatric vaccination, and thinking at what is the cost of actually treating diseases versus preventing them, and really being able to communicate that in a comprehensive but also in a simple manner to the public, I think would make great strides.
Raul, further thoughts in 30 seconds or less?
I fully agree with Ruxandra.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to the rest of the session talking more about vaccines.
Thank you.
Thank you.